Thank you very much for joining this week's talk on the concluding books, the concluding sedras of the book of Bamidbar. And it could be said that actually this is the end of the action part of the Torah, although we are going to begin the book of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, the following Shabbos. But the book of Devarim is a soliloquy, is a speech, the final address of Moshe Rabbeinu to the children of Israel. And so it is really with the conclusion of these sedras of matos and masei that we read together in the diaspora this year, and thus we catch up with the readings in the land of Israel where they are just reading the sedra of masei. But it is with these sedras that we conclude the Torah. And there is in many ways a full circle, and so many of the themes and the events and the dramas that we read about in Bereshis and Shemos are actually alluded to in very subtle ways in the Sedra, in these Sedras of Matos and Masei as we conclude Bamidbar. But I want to actually focus on this year, the way we read the two Sedras together. It is actually going to be already in the 9 days, in the escalation of the aspects of mourning that we observe during the 3-week period between the 17th day of Tammuz and the 9th of Av, and the special lessons that we can extract from the words and the way we're reading them this year. And I feel that if we can digest it by thinking of it as 12 to 1 in 3 weeks. So 12, how do we go from 12 tribes to one nation in the period of the 3 weeks? The 3 weeks is a time where individually, collectively, we observe, we remember national destruction, the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, two temples, and along the years of our history, so many tragedies, global tragedies all over the world happened during this time period. And I think that certain events and experiences that we read about in this week's Sedra really give us, as always, the tools to climb out of this terrible rut and this period that seems to almost inexorably lead us just further and further away from our salvation, but really actually has within it the seeds of our ability to be saved and to save ourselves. The first event that is recorded actually in the portion of Masei as a living legacy, as a beam, a light beam of hope, is the mention in the Sedra of Masei of the passing. Actually, it is the recap, because we've already read about it previously, but we have the retelling of the passing of Aaron the high priest, Aaron HaKohen, and that is in chapter 33, verse 38. Vayal Aaron HaKohen el Hor HaHar, and Aaron the Kohen, the priest, ascended the Hor HaHar, the Mount of HaHar, al pi Hashem, according to the instruction of Hashem. Vayomos Shom, and he died there. Bishnas ha'arbaim letzeis b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, in the 40th year of the children of Israel going out of the land of Egypt. B'chodesh ha'chamishi be'echod lachodesh, in the 5th month, on the 1st of the month. The 5th month, we count the sequence of the months from the month of Nisan, and the 5th month is the month of Av. The first day of the month of Av is the first of the 9 days, Rosh Chodesh Av, that we observe on Friday. And so it is, on the one hand, history, on the one hand, very much living history. And Aaron HaKohen is famous for his commitment, his passion for peace and for reconciliation, and for bringing together people who had become distant, who argued, and he would go the extra mile. He would humble himself in order to just bring about peace. He would learn from Hashem, and the example is that when a woman is suspected of improper uh, relations with a man, then the Kohen writes the name of Hashem on a piece of paper and tears it up and makes a potion that she has to drink. And this this is actually a means of bringing about reconciliation between husband and wife. And so similarly, Aaron was prepared to just put aside his own needs, his own desires, and just really focus on achieving peace. And this is also mentioned in Pirkei Avos, chapter 1, Mishnah 12. Ohev Shalom, Varodev Shalom. He didn't just love peace, he pursued it. And he put tremendous effort in achieving peaceful relations between husband and wife and between individuals in the community. And so by remembering his life on the day of his passing, we keep him alive, and also we provide ourselves with the type of role model that is worthy of following, and that can give us such an appropriate message for this time of year, when we acknowledge that the destruction happened largely because of the breakdown of relations between individuals, because of sinas chinam, baseless, causeless hatred. And so we need to work very hard to provide the antidote to that. And just remembering Aaron is a very basic way on the very day of his passing, on the 1st of Av. So that, I think, is the first of the messages that are so timely, crossing all the time barriers, helping us to understand that the way forward is to have this sense of unity among us. But if we are comprised of 12 tribes, and each tribe has their affiliation, has their identity, and this can sometimes cause fractiousness. This can sometimes this can cause us to look on people who are not members of our tribe as the other. And this is actually something that did happen. And there are two scenes that occur within these sedras. One is the conclusion of the conversations and the results of the plea of the daughters of Tzlafchad when they asked to be able to inherit, because they had no brothers, and so they wanted to take their father's inheritance. And the menfolk of their tribe approached Moshe Rabbeinu and they said, yes, that's fine, but if the daughters of Tzlafchad will marry out of the tribe, then that means that the land that really belonged to the tribe of Menashe, that this land would go to another tribe. And so the Moshe Rabbeinu agreed with this observation, and the ruling came that the daughters of Tzlafchad would have to marry members within the tribe, marries from their own tribe. So that meant that the land would not be lost to the tribe. It would not go to a husband that came from another tribe. And so this actually was the beginning of a ban on intertribal marriage, that people were only allowed to marry within their tribe. And if we're trying to think of ourselves as one nation, that kind of rule is really going completely in the opposite direction. And it had very extreme consequences, which we read about in Shoftim, the book of Judges, and that is chapter 11, verses 1 and 2. And it talks about Yiftach. The judge Yiftach from Gilad was a powerful man, the son of a prostitute. The wife of Gilad gave birth to sons, and when they grew up, they evicted Yiftach, saying, You will not inherit from our father. And according to the Targum Tosefta, it became the tradition in Israel that in order to avoid a change of inheritance from tribe to tribe, a woman from one tribe would not marry a man from another. If a woman would fall in love with a member of another tribe, she would be sent out without property, and they would call her a whore, lover of a man from another tribe. This is what happened to Yiftach's mother. So here we see that the consequences of tribalism really take us away from the unity that we need to have as one nation. But we all know that everybody has their tribal affiliation. We have the encampment in the book of Bamidbar, which is very much focused on each tribe with its own flag, with its own place in the camp. It's very much part of the structure, and it's such a challenge to respect that and to know that we get a certain amount of security from being a member of a smaller group and being comfortable and familiar with everybody from that smaller group, yet not fracturing into these 12 separate pieces. And this really is, I think, something that is so pertinent for the 3 weeks. And the story continues in as much as on Tu B'Av, which is the 15th of Av, that the ban on intertribal marriages was lifted. And this was one of the reasons that the 15th of Av is celebrated as a festival, because this was a very harsh prohibition that, and we see how in the case of Yiftach it had such catastrophic consequences, but it meant that we could again become one nation rather than 12 tribes. And so I think that as we are looking at a Sedra that's called matos, which means tribes, and focusing on the units of the tribes, and we can see it is something that is causing problems, and we need to be able to also expand more broadly. And I think that another event in these Sedras that involves again tribes, specifically two tribes at first, which actually bring us closer to finding a resolution to this problem. And this is when the tribes of Reuven and Gad, after they've fought successful battles against the Midianites, and they see that the land is very fertile. They have a lot of property, they have a lot of cattle, and the pasture land on that side of the Jordan, on the west side of Jordan, the River Jordan, is very suitable for all of their property. And so they go to Moshe Rabbeinu with a request that they should be able to actually live in the area that they've just conquered, rather than go into the land of Israel with the rest of the people. And we find this in the chapters right, so it's chapter 32, and we'll go to verse 1. And we start off with a little hint as to the cause, part of the cause of the problem. Umikne Rav Haya Livnei Reuven v'Livnei Gad Otzum Ma'od. And there was a large amount of cattle to belonging to the sons of Reuven and to the sons of Gad. Mighty, very huge amounts. Very inelegant translation. But this very emphasis brings to mind a Yiddish saying that too much of anything is no good. And we have Rav, we have the word Rav, which means many, and Otzum Ma'od. They didn't just have a lot; they had a very lot, equaling too much. And this causes them to perhaps behave and think in ways that are inappropriate. Firstly, they're breaking away from the nation because of this property. Also, when they request from Moshe Rabbeinu, they say that especially after Moshe is very concerned that he has a repeat performance of what happened with the Meraglim, and he's worried that other people will also want to desist from going into the land of Israel. He thinks it's going to undermine confidence in really what is the bigger plan, and so he is very worried. And Reuben and God try to reassure Moshe by saying that they're very understanding of what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, and this is actually in the expression in the Torah. This is chapter 32, verse 16. Vayikshu elav, and they drew near to him. Vayomu, and they said. And this Vayigash, which we remember from Vayigash Yehuda, when Yehuda is trying to speak to, although he doesn't yet know it's Yosef, but there is drawing near in a respectful way. It's not confrontational, even though things may be said that perhaps one party is not going to like, but it's not done in an aggressive way. It's this word Vayigash is I think a symbol of a softer approach. And they say Gidros Tzon Nivne Lemiknenu. We will build pens for our sheep and our cattle, po here, Va'orim Letapenu, and cities for our young ones. And then after we've done that, we will then go and fight for the land of Israel along with the members of the other tribes. And only once everybody has received their tribal, their holding, their possession, their inheritance, will we come back. And Moshe Rabbeinu hears this and he accedes to their request, but he changes the order. And in so doing, he is giving them a rebuke that they were concerned to first build for their cattle, for their property, and then build for their children. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, you take care of your children first, and then you look after your property, your cattle, your things. And so this is, again, the sort of the breaking off of the tribes. At this point, two tribes are going to go on the west side of the Jordan, and the negative aspect of this request is shown with hindsight in terms of the long view of history, because this was these were the first tribes to go into exile when the land of Israel was conquered, first by the Babylonians, then the people who lived on the west side of the Jordan, the River Jordan, were the ones who went into exile first. What is absolutely fascinating is that as this progresses, we have this in chapter 32, verse 33. It says, "Vayitain lahem Moshe livnei God v'livnei Reuven v'lachatzi shevet Menashe ben Yosef es mamleches Sichon melech ha'Amori." And Moshe gave to the children of God, the children of Reuben, and to half the tribe of Menashe, the son of Yosef, the kingdom of Sichon, the king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, the king of the Bashan, the land and cities in the borders of the cities of the land around it. Now we have this mention now of half a tribe of Menashe, and where did it come up? How we don't seem to hear about Menashe being involved in the original request. So they came along later, and what we have is very conspicuously a half a tribe living on the west side of the Jordan, and the other half are going to live on the east side with the rest of the other 9.5 tribes. And the significance of this is going to act as, as a form of cement, as a form of bond that is going to work to prevent the fracturing of two tribes on one side of the Jordan, leading independent, distinct lives, the 10 tribes living on the other. Because you have this one tribe that is split, there's going to be movement, there's going to be interaction, and one tribe is going to act as a magnet and it's going to spill out onto the larger scale. So that is going to be an organic way to prevent the establishing of two separate states, because you've got this one tribe acting as a bridge, acting as a link or cement to keep the whole nation together as we try so hard to preserve the unity, understanding that we are comprised of 12 individual groups, but equally trying to be one nation, so important at this time of year. And I think that there is a real message and something that we can all use as a tool to repair relations, because inevitably relations between people will go through ups and downs. There'll be periods of disagreement between everybody. This is part of human existence, but it's always going to be how we resolve those. And what's the relevance of Menashe? Why just Menashe? If there was going to be a tribe that seemed to be plucked out of we're not quite sure where, what is the significance of Menashe? So if we go back to Bereshis, because I mentioned at the beginning that there are so many allusions and so many crossovers and hints to events and to people that happened earlier in the Torah's journey, that this is something that I'm focusing on, but it actually is much broader. And we have, when Yosef is in Egypt and he has gone through tremendous trauma, when he is separated from his family, when his brothers vent their anger, their frustration, and they sell him. They're part of that whole process that ended in him and Yosef going down to Egypt. And as he rises to incredible success and fame, Yosef has two children. And we read about it in the book of Bereshis, chapter 41, verse 51. And the Torah gives us the reasons for the naming, the names that he chooses for his two sons. Vayikra Yosef es Shem HaBachor Menashe. And Yosef called the name of the firstborn Menashe. Ki nasheni Elohim es kol amali, because God helped me forget all my travail, the es kol beis avi, and all the house of my father. And this is quite a challenging reason, and the suffering that Yosef HaTzadik underwent is certainly palpable in the fact that he is naming his child in this way. And it's often, or we could perhaps at first sight think of it as harboring a tremendous amount of resentment. But there is another way to interpret this name, and that way is to look on it as a way of putting that trauma behind him. He is not going to be defined by that trauma. That forgetting is a positive forgetting, and that forgetting is going to enable him to move forward, to build a new life, to not be pulled down by this very negative energy of resentment. Even if he was treated very badly, he is not going to continue to make himself a victim. He is going to forget. He is going to he is going to be the one who is released. And we say forgive and forget. And that doesn't mean that you airbrush history, but it means that you are able to move on. You're not going to let yourself be defined by what someone else has done to you. And so this concept is so relevant when we think of the one tribe that is going to be the 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 flag, the emblem of trying to make sure that there is proper unity between all of the tribes, whichever side of the Jordan, the River Jordan, they are on. And so we, as individuals, at any time in any place, can remember this concept of Menashe, this concept of being able to forget certain negative things that were done and still be able to move on, live, create a new life. And in that way, we are also able to repair damaged relationships, and we're able to create a fertile environment, just like the tribes of Reuven and Gad were so desperate for this fertile land for their cattle. We are actually all on a journey to the promised land. The Sedra of Masei really recaps the stages of the journey of the children of Israel towards the promised land. And that was a very specific journey in a very specific time. But it also applies to the journey of the children of Israel from the beginning of our nationhood, and we are all on that journey to the promised land. And so as we do it in this period of the 3 weeks, we want to be able to recapture the potential, the incredible joy that we bring to Hashem when we are observing the mitzvahs, when we are part of the rebuilding of the Bet HaMikdash, which is something that the loss of which we're mourning now. And so I think that by looking carefully at this concept of tribe, realizing that yes, it's human nature to want to belong to a smaller group, but equally we have to see ourselves as part of a whole. We have to work to make that unity happen among the whole nation, and using the concept of Menashe, using the fact that Menashe was the bridge in this tribal allocation, but also the concept of the name of Menashe. And in doing that, in learning all these lessons, we certainly have enough material to remedy the defects and the faults, and to rewrite these passages of history and break out of the cycle of tragedy and mourning that is synonymous with this time of year, and turn it to a time of Yom Tov and festival and rejoicing with the coming of Mashiach and the rebuilding of the temple. B'mheira v'yameinu. And wishing everybody a very good Chodesh, a very good month of Av, and we should all merit that we don't have to fast Tisha B'Av, that this will happen so speedily that within a matter of days and weeks we will merit to see this incredible miracle. Thank you for listening, and wishing everybody a very good Shabbos.